when people like me go online and type certain things, there are certain people that come and quickly attack. There are people who create fake accounts just to attack because they maintain the agenda of this party in power. It doesn't mean that there won't be people who do it for the other party, but a lot of them are in the diaspora who do it, right? So that is how bad it is. What has disappointed me as a person who has been book smart, because I've been educated, is that some of us who are very degreed are some of the same people fighting and supporting the system. Let me give you an example. I will call out Dr. Carla Barnett, who knows very well the whole economic situation, knows very well. She knows very. She was once at the central bank. She knows very well the Finance and Audit Reform Act. But yet, what has she done? She aligned herself with a party that has violated that act. If people don't know what is the Finance and Audit Reform Act, it was an act that said, look, if government wants to spend $10 million or more, no prime minister can ever write that off on their own. So I did that and got in trouble, and I'll explain that. But what happened? Dean Barrow did the same thing when he took the Petro-Carib dollars, right? When the unions brought it to his attention, what did he do? He passed a special act called the Petro-Carib Loans Act. And what he said, notwithstanding what any other law said, this law trumped it. Legalize it and legitimize it by saying that this new act he's passing is retroactive to the date when he carried out that conduct that was illegal. But yet, my dear friend Carla Barnett, who I've known professionally for years and I interviewed her as a journalist, aligns herself with the party, and when it came to speak on that issue, she never said a word. You know why I wanted to be educated? Not because I wanted to be above anybody, because I wanted to have the knowledge so that when I need to take a stand, I take a stand on principle. So I call out people with degrees when they forget that their education taught them certain things and yet they do not live by it. Because it's no use to have an education if you don't have principles and character to align with that education. Education is just having knowledge. It's your character and your principle that then makes you apply the education you have to the real circumstances, and when you've been learned, you are held at a higher standard and you're expected to give back more to bring others along. And that's what we're not having in our country. That's why Belize cannot progress. The masses who are uneducated, I don't stump them because they've been denied opportunity. It's the handful that have had the opportunity, the access to education, the scholarships and the exposure and everything, who have silently stood by.
The status quo, the oligarchy that is called Belize. Yes.
They have silently stood by and watched the masses become more and more dependent. They've become part of the system that creates that. They've held on to jobs and position, and what? Do they really want change? No. They go up on Facebook and then comment you that think the way they comment that they're not part of the problem. We are all part of the problem. As long as we remain silent, as long as we remain resentful, and as long as we fail to act when evil is done.
And fail to and resist that with everything that cannot be accepted. Never ever that kind
Nothing hurts me more than to see people that I used to hang out with in my political party. And we went against, we protested, we wrote against, we went to the Senate or the House and we voted against these things when the PUP was doing it. Nothing hurt me more to see that I knew we voted against it and know that they're in power. They forgot that we fought together, they forgot that we protested together, they forgot that we voted against together, they forgot we struggled together, because now they're doing it, it's okay.
It's okay.
That is why I couldn't stay in any political party. Because if it was wrong then it has to be wrong now, because it's the principle that matters.
And it's a stand that people like Jorge Spata took. In that, coming into the PUP, he saw that kind of corruption and that kind of political terrorism that you are talking about right there. And he did not want to be a part of it, and he left. In terms of rebellion, in terms of, well, I'm not going to be a part of this. You know, you like him, you come from that kind of thing where, like you're saying, we cannot just condone these kinds of things inside of a government. We got to speak out, and if you can't change it with your mouth, you change it with your hands and try to do something about it and take a stand. But how many, like you said, they are so comfortable, they are part of the status quo, and though they were the ones on the opposition side and complaining, now that they're in power, they forgot that they were once on that side, and this is the hypocrisy. that exists inside of our political arena.
Yeah.
You know.
I remember being opposition leader in the Senate for the UDP, 1999-2000. We voted against specific legislation. I remember one of them was the Casino, the Gambling Act. And for very good reasons. Of course, they sugarcoated it by saying that the monies that we would get from the gambling would go into education. Up to today, I have not seen an accounting of the monies that we've netted through licensings of casino and taxes from casino, and see that that has been directly pumped into education. That should not have even been counted into the general fund. It should have been, so education ministry would have gotten its usual budget, plus monies that we get from that. When it's our time to campaign, that we must put in our manifesto that we will repeal it. It hasn't been repealed up to today. As a matter of fact, some of those same politicians have interest in casinos now.
Wow.
That's how hypocritical they are.
Hypocritical it is.
Then, I'll give you another example. I remember when I was a journalist, I remember interviewing Dean Barrow about a workshop we were having called Whether the Privy Council, whether we should keep the Privy Council or we should have the Caribbean Court of Justice. He was the main architect behind that. He was the groundbreaking attorney general behind that movement. He was in power at that time, and that was the debate ranging. The UDP lost and he didn't see it to completion. So now we are in a position, and the PUP want to continue the work he started, and I never forgot this most painful moment in my life, having interviewed him personally as a journalist in the show. Now he's my party leader, and we must vote on this issue in the Senate and the National Assembly. And he said, we will vote against it. I was shocked. I said, well, how could you vote on something that you birthed? That was a good idea. I interviewed you. You told me the principle now. How can you vote against it? I mean, that's how politics is. He says he still believes in it, but we need to vote against it, because what we would say that we would vote for it unless they do X, Y, and Z. So we would have voted for it if they do X, Y, and Z, which had nothing to do with that. And I said, but that's so wrong, because if we either agree on it or we disagree on it, and the other issue which we know they won't give it, why would we tie it in? Because it's like we're saying, okay, we will vote on it if you all appoint so and so to become the chairman of some board. You know they will never appoint that person because that's one of your persons. So why would you tie that into something that you want? Because it's technically a no vote. Of course, eventually we ended up having the Caribbean Court of Justice, which to me is the right thing. But it was the duplicity in things. And I was too much of a straight shooter to stay in politics. Like, my yes has to be yes and my no has to be no. And if I made a yes and I changed my mind because I've evolved my thinking and I changed it, no problem, I'll change it. But to leverage things like that, and I could give you countless examples. Having interviewed, and
you saw it as political expedient for him
yes.
at the time, but then when he got in, he changed.
I saw it with having interviewed George Price. I got to interview Said Musa. I got to interview Dean Barrow, Manuel Escobar, and everybody who has ever been in political office. I have interviews I did with them, so I had an idea as to where they're coming from. And what is painful is to see that these same political leaders, when they're in power, they say one thing, and then when they're in opposition, they change, you know. It's like right now, Johnny Busenio is the leader of the opposition, and he wants power. So he's saying all the right things about getting women into politics. He's talking about he would create legislation to make sure that the Public Account Committee is more independent. He's talking about re-registration, blah, 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 blah.
But no amendment in the Constitution to accommodate women more better and giving them more power.
But he's just saying that because he's in opposition.
Yes.
When he gets in power, how do you think he'll carry it out?
No. Well, we have behind us the history of it. They never carried out. How many of them have carried out what they say they will carry out as a mandate and been elected to power by the electorate have never really carried out those mandates?
And many people still vote for them.
Yes.
You know what's another development that is painful to see in my country? That now that we have free media, and I appreciate free media because I started journalism in a time when we were a censored media.
You are a pioneer in that area.
We had one radio station, one TV station, and I'm telling you, the Prime Minister, the Minister responsible, even the Government General had to approve those stories before we aired it. I'm telling you.
Very much so. We know how
Even the
CLB
music-
Rogers used to do it.
Even the music we played, who could go on, and all of that was censored. So I appreciate free media, but now in this free media, we have gone a dangerous road.
Yes.
And that dangerous road is that now the political parties own radio and TV station. I think that should have never happened. It was enough that they owned a newspaper, because then that forced our people to be literate in terms of reading. But now they have all these calling shows and people could say anything they want. They call people the most vulgar things. They call
it's
them
out of
names.
control.
It's like, think about.
There is no regulation of it at all.
You remember those scenes we used to like to have in a play where Miss Mavis go to Miss Doris at the over the fence and they gossip and they
Yes.
That's what
It is. Yeah.
these media houses have become. And worse yet, they are financed when in power. The party in power, their media house is financed by taxpayers' money, because all the acts of government go to them. We don't want to change it. So here now we have free media, but what do we have? A corrupted system to keep this free media going. And it's not so free, it's skewed, it's politically skewed.
And it's not regulated.
It's not regulated.
So what are the laws that regulate the Belize media? There are any on the books, Audrey, in terms of regulating that kind of mess that you're talking about?
There is, but nobody wants to enforce it, because who appoints the members of the broadcasting authority? We've had a very dormant broadcasting authority for some time. Who appoints the people of PUC, the Public Utilities Commission? Who appoints all these boards and so that can have a say over it? The same government in power. So we've come to realize that the system we have at present is not working. I like some of the suggestions that BPP make, but sadly the people are not gravitating to it, because
They don't understand.
we've created the masses that don't want to hear the issues. They only want to pay my bill. And even the so-called high school educated people still ask for that. It has become a trend. You don't go vote unless you're paid. Us old school will go vote on principle, but there's this new trend. And that has got to be destructive to our country. It was one of the most backward, one of the most destructive system mentality that we can have as a people, because they no longer care about issues. And if we have any doubt about how low we've become, just look at the debate in the National Assembly.
Yes, and it's broadcasted now. We hear them online now. They're streamed.
And now I wish that was censored.
And the Belizeans in the diaspora do laugh. It's like, wow, the big man and woman, the opinion that, or mostly are the men, the opinion that the quarrel, like puts a dog up in there like that.
You saw the last budget debate? When they were saying who beat for who, wife and whatever?
Yes.
Can you imagine? And you know why they get away with it? Because in law there are two areas where communication is privileged. An attorney and your clients, if you become my client, what you say to me is forever privileged. I can never reveal it, but you can reveal it except if it's something illegal, like you trying to get me to go launder money for you. That's privilege. The other source of privileged communication is in the National Assembly. That is why the Prime Minister and leader of the opposition and all the ministers there can get up and call Bilal any name they want, say the nastiest thing they want about Audrey, and why we can never sue them with defamation, no matter how lie it is, because they are protected by parliamentary privilege.
A kind of parliamentary privileges that if an exile writes is they are like a king. It's a monarchy. It's a system that is like the Prime Minister is like a king. He centralized power in terms of the whole parliamentary democracy system is a carbon copy of the British system, and therefore we didn't change it though, Audrey. Why we didn't change it?
They don't want to amend it, they don't want to change it, because you have to understand one of the dangerous things that has happened to us is that we replaced our white master with an even worse master, because our new master looked just like us.
A new colonialist.
We tend to trust people who look like us. It's a human brain mechanism that you trust the people that look like you. So now imagine we distrusted the white master because he looked different from, and we knew where he was coming from. We knew that devil, but the one we replaced him with looks like us. So while he's doing, the one that looks like us is doing the same thing or worse to us, we cannot fight because we see ourselves, we're mirrored by them.
Much as what Frantz Fanon calls black skin, white mass.
Yeah.
That's psychiatry, right?
Yeah.
So when you watch what is happening to these governments in the Caribbean, right, in
Yeah.
sort of this this neo-colonialist monster the British created or these colonial powers created,
Yeah.
and it's like, all right, this is some form of serious psychological situation. Are you still colonized or what? What is the problem? You know?
And so I want to take it into another level of where we are as a society. And I've written about this because I've learned a lot through my legal studies, having clients, having been a prosecutor with the DPP's office after I came back from my legal studies, and having had my own experiences at the family court, understanding my background, where I come from and everything. I've now understood why my society is going in the direction it's going. And why is it that our leaders are where it is, and it's a psychology that has happened. You see, we tend to understand abuse if we say you're in a home and your father beat you, your mother beat you, or you see your father beat your mother. That's abuse.
Yes.
We can understand it in that little micro context. But take that same principle and put it in context of our whole society and our history, then you'll understand that we as a country were abused by our slave masters. So we have a psyche where we've accepted violence and abuse as a norm. Not that we want to be abused, but when you're an abused,
Yes, sir.
when you're an abused people, when you're an abused people, there's
Yeah.
a mentality that develops, right? So we have replaced our colonial masters with local masters who likely abuse us because why? An abused person becomes an abuser, and we don't want to accept it. You know why those politicians can stand up in the National Assembly and flippantly talk about who beat who wife and all of that? Because when you are an abuser, you cannot understand the magnitude of it. It's this sense of superiority and control you have. So they can easily talk about it. You know why we can't solve the problem? Because the same people who are abusers in their own home cannot be asked to solve a problem because they have acclimatized.
To govern a country.
They have become normal in it. And that is why I keep saying I wrote an article talking about the violence we accept to show that yes, while we have violence in our home, socially, as a people, we've accepted violence. And so what do we expect to produce? We are just reaping what we've
Martin
sown.
Luther King said, violence begot violence.
Exactly, and that's what has happened. So we have leaders who are politically abusive towards us because the fact that I feel that I could pay you and you vote for me and after that you have no say, that's a level of abuse because now under our Domestic Violence Act, finally we have gotten
psychological abuse.
we have graduated to the point where we understand abuse, where the Association of Psychiatry has it. There is financial abuse, there is emotional abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. Financial abuse is the one that the politicians play on us
Say it, Audrey, that's the weapon.
Every time they bribe us to vote, that's financial abuse.
That's right.
That's financial abuse.
It's a powerful weapon too.
It is a powerful
against the oppressed.
So our very leaders are the very abusers against us. So if you can see it in the big picture, I'm saying it. Think about that's the national psyche that has developed. And I'm not saying every single person, I'm generalizing what has become the cultural norm. Now think about that and put it in context of your immediate community and your home, in your household. If you, as a young person, have come to accept, you hear your parents talk and see that they take money for votes and how they carry on. For you, growing up, your first school or first classroom is your home. So you see that as acceptable. So you grow up and seeing that as acceptable. But yet you will expect those same young people to be different. You cannot be different. You've been birthed and bred in a certain environment.
You didn't set no example and they saw that, so they're going to do the same thing.
Exactly.
Very much so.
There's another level of abuse that has taken a while to come to the surface, but it has existed for a long time, and that's sexual abuse. And that's an issue very close to my heart as a woman because I have come to meet many victims. I've had to work with them. I did a lot of sexual cases as a prosecutor. I could never defend someone accused of a sexual offense, even if they say they're innocent. It was against my principle.
Case of point recent to the young man who just beat and raped a little baby to
The
death.
17-month-old,
yes. It was so horrible.
So there's a lot of sexual abuse in our society, and if we want to trace back the history, you see, we don't want to talk about our history. We don't want to write our history. We want to forget it. But we were birthed out of a nation that was enslaved, a people that was enslaved. Even when we met the Maya, they were they've had to flee. We don't know the whole history of how their women were beaten, raped, and their men were killed.
Genocide. That was genocide, Audrey Matura.
But there is a trauma of sexual abuse against us as a people.
Yes.
And that same trauma of sexual abuse.
We denying it? Are we kind of living in a state of denial down there? That things did not happen?
Psychology has shown that trauma transfers from generation to generation. Has any of our leaders taken the time to understand the psychology of the human being that they are governing, to understand where we are as a nation? No, because they're not interested to make your life better. They're only interested of keeping you in power. And so we are seeing all these cases of sexual abuse, but they didn't just happen. It has been happening for a while. But the person who becomes a sexual predator, it's not to make excuse for them. The likelihood, 90 to 99% was that they were abused themselves. If you're an abused person, it is seldom possible for you to act outside of that norm. That's your norm. So you become an abuser. And that is why we know a lot of sexual abuse is going on. It's nothing new, and nobody wants to take it on and see the whole psychology, the historical psychology where it comes from, to start dealing with it. It can be dealt with. But you have to remember, this is how it works. If Bilal was abused as a young man and he grows up and becomes an abuser, not that he wants to be that, it's his environment that created him to that, he may have lacked the opportunity that could move him beyond that, because not everybody who has been abused is an abuser. Some of them have learned to cope and improved and whatever. But there's a likely propensity that you'll be. So now Bilal becomes an abuser, and Bilal has 4, 5, 6 children who grows up in a very abusive environment that he knows. So he has now, having 5 children, 5 times multiply what he is. Each one of those children, let's say out of all 5, 3 of them has the same propensity and live the same way. Those 3 now have their other 5, and that is how the problem has magnified over the years. Where we are in a society where if I had to do the survey, I put my head on the block that at least 75% of our females, or even our young boys, have been sexually abused. And 90% of our people have been abused in some form or the other.
That's deep.
I do believe that. And what we are seeing, so what we are seeing as a sociology of our society is just a reflection of all the problems we've ignored over the years. Because when George Price made decisions that prefer the lighter skin over the darker skin people, or he made sure that his relatives became the doctors and controlled everything, and most of the Creole, the Royal Creole, they had to leave. That was a form of abuse, right? And we stemmed our history from there. So where we expect? And before he did that to us, the colonial masters were playing one of the East Indians were made to believe they were better than the blacks, you know? The mestizos were made to believe they were better than the Mayan Indians, because there was a pedigree of color. I mean, I grew up in that era. I grew up in that era where you hear
Belize has its own caste system.
Yes, they tell you marry someone lighter than you because you want to increase your pedigree. And I was just amazed. Because when you're innocent, you listen to these things and you take them literally. So I have come to understand the psychology of my nation.
Yes.
I understand why we have crimes where we are. I understand the violence. Police on the streets will not stem the violence.
Yes.
When you have to deal with psychologically, emotionally traumatized and abused people, bringing more abuse on them will only make them more hardened and more abusive.
Yes,
it's a soft approach that's needed right now. Some of them are far gone. An abused person could reach a point that you're far gone. And right now, they're saying, so give the solution, give the solution. There are many solutions, there's not only one. But one solution that is long term is that we need to put our resources in this generation, this young generation, because your first 7 years are your developmental years. That's when you develop what you are. Our children are growing in neighborhoods where the gunshot is normal now.
They're traumatized.
They are traumatized. They're forever. If you take their pulse, young children are having
look how many gang enclaves are in Belize City.
High blood pressure. Just last night, it was not last night, the night before, a young lady killed. The gangs are no longer, these guys are no longer going after their rival males. They're going after the women and the children.
And that's how gangs are.
Dr. Gale.
They can't get you to kill your whole family.
It was predicted already by Dr. Gale. So they keep saying, well, not just a right and a talk, give solution. No, I don't have to invent the wheel. We had the best of professionals.
The Gale report?
We have the solution. What we do not have are leaders who have dealt with they themselves being abused and being abusers to understand the problem, to know that there needs to take a step needs to be taken to resolve it.
Yes. And they continue living in a state of denial.
And they keep on abusing us.
Yeah, they're hypnotizing themselves to believe that that is not so. It is not going on.
They keep on abusing us. On the issue of crime, right? I wrote an article, Saldiva must go. Look at it this way.
Yes, yes. You just put that in?
I put it in about maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
I wrote an
Might have
article,
seen it.
Saldiva
Yeah.
must go. Why did I say that?
Yes, I saw that article.
You have to understand.
Yeah, I saw that article.
You have to understand the psychology of justice.
Yes.
For justice to be done, it must be seen to be done. John Saldiva, in election, I think it was 2012, had a supporter who fired firearms in the crowd, the same way the guys at Mayflower did. When John Saldiva supporter did it, it was wrong. When the guys on Mayflower did it, it was wrong. Let's look at the parallel now. Saldiva's guy never got dragged off by police or anything, because when the police tried to do their job then, he stopped them. Prime Minister gave a press conference and said that John Saldiva was just a civilian when he did that. My question was, if he is just a civilian and he had such power, could you imagine the power he has now as Minister of Police? But he was removed as Minister of Police then because the outcry.
Yeah. The whole Mason thing and all
Forward
that came
5,
up.
6 years later,
Yes.
he's Minister again. But it's worse now. Because when he was removed because of the Mason thing, and there's the evidence is there, the connection. Patrick Farber said, well, I meet him through John. Clear cut. Papa Vanya said, I meet him through John, I actually get some campaign finance on that. The head of GSU then said, well, you know, I had a John right hand, I had a GSU leader, in my boss, I had a friend to it, Mason. Justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. It doesn't mean that Mr. Saldiva in any way condone what Mason did, you know. But you had a connection with him. So as long as his case is pending, you cannot be the Minister of Police. Because as the Minister of Police, you have the final say over those police officers who are the one holding the evidence right now. They hold the chain of custody of all the physical evidence. They are the ones who must write the reports. They are the ones who have given the statements. They are the ones who must go on the stand and testify. They are the ones that without them, the DPP office cannot prosecute. And who is their boss? Their boss is John Saldiva, who was associated and best friend with the very man we want to convict. So I'm not saying that anything illegal, but the principle in law.
It's the principle.
The principle in law, there's a famous case called Ex parte McCarthy. It's a magistrate Sussex Ex parte McCarthy, in which what the principle was that it says that justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be manifestly done. What does that mean? In that case, so that people understand the principle, in the United Kingdom, when a person is brought before the magistrate court, they have 3 magistrates, usually lay persons, and they are supported by a clerk who is a trained legal person. When you come before them, they hear your case and they decide. So when they decide, they retreat into the room. When they retreated into the room, the clerk went with them. They came out back and they said to the man McCarthy, guilty. What did McCarthy attorney find out afterwards? He found out that that same clerk that retired into the room with them was working with the solicitor that was also suing McCarthy, but in a civil matter. And they brought a challenge against the case and said, no, that decision must be quashed. There was bias. The justices gave affidavits saying, but the clerk said nothing to us. And you know what the higher court ruled? It ruled that it did not matter that they said nothing. It's the appearance of justice that matters. The mere fact that he was working with the firm that was also suing the man, and that he was in the room when you deliberated was enough to impugn that decision. It didn't mean you all did anything wrong. It said because in our system, the stream of justice must remain pure. And that infected it, even if you did nothing wrong. And that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about the John Saldiva case. It's a principle that matters. But our Prime Minister, who's a trained attorney and who knows the law, supposedly better than I do, knows that principle, but yet he appointed him. And our people who don't know better accept it. And then when people like me point it out, the trolls on Facebook come to attack. And the very educated people who support the party who should know better come and attack. And they support it because it goes back to the idea that it seems that in politics, once you get in politics, you lose all principles and common sense and you have no dignity. That's what it has come out to. Very few people hiding the power of politics is prepared to say, you know what? He's my party leader, it's my prime minister, it's
wrong.
my government, but it's wrong, and I must say it's wrong.
Very much so.
Wrong is wrong no matter who
Wrong.
does it, you know.
Yeah, that was a mess there when he held the press conference, the Prime Minister did it, and then brought back the former Minister of National Security into that whole picture again. It's like, you're bankrupt or something? What is it? Your cabinet is bankrupt.
Yeah.
You don't have nothing else. Don't you know that someone who was engulfed in a whole controversial situation? Why you want to do that? That's not political capital. That's messed up. You're not going to win a general election the next time with that. Why are you making such a move? But it also says to Audrey, is your cabinet bankrupt? What, you don't have nobody else? I mean, what is the deal?
But I'm looking at it farther beyond that now. So we're going to general election 2018, and we have to look at what does this mean? Well, it's really between 2020 because they had called early election. If they go to 5-year cycle, what does this mean now for the government in waiting? I won't let the opposition get off the hook either, because there's a possibility that they could win. I can't predict elections. I did the recent commentary for the municipal election, and I don't know how it will go. You can't predict. But is our opposition positioning themselves on the right principles to take on leadership of our country and be better than this group that is coming out? Remember, Musa's administration lost because of the level of corruption, lack of accountability and transparency. And the Barrow administration came on the promise of better, and I have not seen better. I've actually seen worse. Now we are waiting, Johnny, the Senate is waiting to take over. We don't know if he managed to take over, but let's look at the principle. What have they done, or are they doing, to show that if they take on power, they will be better? And sometimes I worry that we're changing monkey for butter. What are we seeing in the PUP? We're not seeing the reform we want. Some of the same old names are recycling. When they got this little boost the other day with the municipal election, all of a sudden they feel that they could run for office. And the same old heads are popping out, because we're going back to the very same vicious cycle where people just wait out their turn, get in power, but don't want to do anything substantial for the country, because I realize they're not in it to help and bring service to the country, to improve the country. They're in it to position themselves for self-gratification and power and greed.
Politics is a hustle. Yeah.
And the truth is, the principles of the BBP are much better, but they too are not organized enough to take over reign and leadership. I mean, I love Patrick and his ideas, but he does not have what it takes to become this new revolutionary leader that will bring people on.